In a distant star system under the soft glow of twin moons, Nerissa, a gentle and proud alien diplomat, carried memories that were both beautiful and painful. Her silver skin shimmered in the dim light, and every night she would stand on her private balcony, gazing at the stars. These stars, to her, held the secrets of a past that still beat strongly within her heart. Many years ago, during a time of great conflict between worlds, Nerissa met Orion, a brave and curious human explorer. Their meeting was brief, a moment caught between the chaos of war and the promise of peace. Orion's eyes sparkled like distant stars, and his warm smile shone even in the darkest corners of the universe. In that short time, the two forged a connection that went far beyond the differences of their worlds. For Nerissa, it was a revelation. She had never known such a pure and gentle bond before. However, fate was unkind. As tensions rose and war broke out in full force, Orion vanished during a violent space battle. The news of his presumed death hit Nerissa like a cold shock. Her heart shattered into countless pieces, each one a reminder of the love and hope they once shared. Even as she continued her work as a diplomat, striving to mend the broken ties between her people and others, the memory of Orion lingered like a quiet, persistent echo in her soul. Every day, as Nerissa negotiated peace and built alliances, she carried the weight of that loss. The corridors of the Peace Center were filled with soft voices and gentle footsteps, yet none could erase the memory of Orion's laughter or the kind words he had spoken. His presence had brought a light to her life, a light that continued to shine even after he was gone. His voice, now a distant whisper, urged her to believe in the possibility of change and healing. As the years passed, Nerissa never let go of hope. She believed that love could overcome even the deepest of wounds, and that the universe still held surprises waiting to be uncovered. Every star in the night sky reminded her of Orion's gentle spirit, and every cool breeze seemed to carry whispers of his promise. Despite the cold and vast emptiness of space, Nerissa's heart remained tender and open, always ready for a new dawn. Now, in the quiet moments between her diplomatic duties, Nerissa allowed herself to dream of a future where the shattered pieces of her heart might one day be mended. In her thoughts, she imagined a reunion filled with warmth and healing, a moment when the truth about Orion's fate would be revealed. Until that day came, she held tightly to the memories of their time together, a beacon of hope in a dark universe, proving that even in the deepest despair, love and hope could still guide her forward. Nerissa sat in her dimly lit chamber, her long fingers tracing the edge of a holographic document. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the data screens. Outside, the twin moons cast a silver glow over the city, their light flickering on the glass walls. It was another night like many before, lonely, quiet, and filled with the ghosts of the past. She had learned to live with her sorrow, carrying it like a secret weight in her heart. But fate had different plans. A soft beep echoed through the chamber. Nerissa's ears twitched at the sound. A priority message had arrived. She sighed and pressed a button, expecting it to be another political report or an official request. Instead, a strange transmission flickered onto the screen. The data was broken, the signal weak, but one thing was clear. It was old, almost ancient. Nerissa frowned as she adjusted the frequencies, enhancing the message. The symbols were unfamiliar, the patterns erratic. But then, among the static, something appeared, coordinates. Her breath caught in her throat. The numbers were oddly familiar. She quickly cross-referenced them with her personal archive. Her heart pounded as the location revealed itself. It was a distant sector near the battlefield where Orion had disappeared years ago. A chill ran down her spine. Could it be a mistake? A cruel trick? But deep in her soul, something told her otherwise. Her fingers trembled as she continued to decrypt the transmission. The sound quality was poor, but a voice, distorted and broken, emerged from the static. The voice was rough, tired, weak, yet unmistakable. Nerissa, if you hear this, I am alive. The chamber spun around her. For a moment, She thought she had imagined it. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. She replayed the message again, and again. Orion. The name burst into her mind like a star igniting in the darkness. He was alive. Somewhere, somehow, against all odds, he had survived. Nerissa clutched the table, her body frozen between disbelief and overwhelming emotion. Tears welled in her silver eyes, threatening to fall. She had spent years mourning him, believing that he had been lost to the endless void of space. She had accepted the pain, let it carve itself into her soul. But now that pain cracked open, revealing something raw and powerful beneath it. Hope. Nerissa inhaled sharply, wiping away a stray tear. This was no time to be weak. If Orion was alive, then she would find him. Nothing else mattered. Not her duty, not the risks, not the past. With newfound determination, she activated her personal starship's system. She input the coordinates, set the course, and prepared to leave. The universe had given her a second chance, and she would not let it slip away. Nerissa sat in the pilot's seat of her sleek starship, her hands gripping the controls tightly. The engines hummed beneath her, ready to launch at her command. The coordinates from Orion's transmission were locked in, guiding her to a distant sector that had long been abandoned. Her heart pounded against her chest, a storm of emotions raging inside her. Could it really be true? Could Orion still be alive after all these years? The logical part of her mind warned her to be cautious. It could be a trap, an illusion, or just a ghost of the past. But her heart told her otherwise. She couldn't ignore this. The ship's thrusters roared as she broke free from the planet's atmosphere, soaring into the vastness of space. The stars stretched endlessly before her, a sea of shimmering lights, each one holding secrets of the universe. As she set the ship to autopilot, memories of Orion flooded her mind. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to relive them. She remembered the first time they had met, how his eyes had sparkled with curiosity, how he had asked 1,000 questions about her world without hesitation. Most aliens feared her people, but not Orion. He was different. He was fearless in his kindness, relentless in his desire to understand. She had once laughed at his stubbornness, calling him reckless, but that same stubbornness was what had drawn her to him. He never gave up, not on a mission, not on his beliefs, and not on her. And now, after all these years, he had found a way to reach her. Her fingers brushed against the silver pendant hanging around her neck, a gift from Orion, something he had given her before their final battle. She had kept it close, never parting with it, even when she had believed he was gone forever. A soft sigh escaped her lips. "If you're alive, Orion," she whispered to the empty cabin, "then I will find you." Suddenly, the ship's console beeped, pulling her from her thoughts. She leaned forward, her eyes scanning the display. She was nearing the destination. The sector was marked as a dead zone. No active colonies, no military presence, only remnants of old battles long forgotten. Nerissa's grip tightened. If Orion had survived here, then he must have suffered. The thought made her chest tighten. How had he endured? How had he lived all these years alone? The ship slowed as she reached the designated coordinates. A massive asteroid field stretched before her, floating ruins of destroyed ships scattered among the debris. It was a graveyard of the past. Her heart ached, but she pushed the pain aside. Activating her scanners, she searched for any sign of life. The screen flickered, data streaming in. Then, there it was. A weak but unmistakable life signal. Nerissa's breath hitched. Orion. She had found him. Nerissa's hands trembled slightly as she steered her ship closer to the signal. Her silver eyes scanned the asteroid field ahead, where shattered remains of warships floated like forgotten ghosts. The battle that had taken Orion away from her had left this place a graveyard. And yet, he was here. The scanner pulsed again, confirming the weak life signal. It was coming from within a large wreckage, half buried inside an asteroid. The ship looked ancient, rusted by time and space exposure. Neresa's heart pounded as she prepared to land. If Orion was inside, he had survived in this desolate place for years. The moment her ship touched the surface of the asteroid, she wasted no time. Equipping her oxygen mask and plasma torch, she stepped onto the rocky ground. The silence of space was absolute, the only sound coming from her suit's breathing apparatus. She approached the wreckage, brushing her fingers along its cold metal surface. The ship was an old human model, barely functional. The fact that it still had any life support left was a miracle. Nerissa ignited her plasma torch and cut through the thick metal entrance. Sparks flew as the torch sliced through, and after a few tense moments, the door gave way with a hiss. A rush of stale air greeted her, filled with the scent of rust and age. She stepped inside. The interior was dark, illuminated only by flickering emergency lights. The walls were covered in scratches, and broken equipment lay scattered across the floor. She moved cautiously, following the scanner's readings. Then she heard it. A weak, ragged breath. Nerissa froze, her heart hammering. She turned a corner and saw him. Orion. He was lying against a console, his body frail, his face covered in stubble. His once strong frame was now thin, his clothes worn and tattered. But his eyes, those deep, human eyes, still held the fire she remembered. He blinked slowly, as if unsure if she was real. Nerissa. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. A sharp pain twisted in her chest. She rushed to him, kneeling by his side. Orion, you're alive. Her voice trembled with emotion. A weak smile touched his lips. Took you long enough. Tears welled in her silver eyes. She had imagined this moment for so long, dreamed of it, feared it. But now, seeing him like this, broken yet still alive, it was almost too much. She gently touched his face, feeling the warmth of his skin. I thought I lost you forever. Orion coughed, his breath shaky. I thought I lost me too. Nerissa swallowed the lump in her throat. She wouldn't lose him again. Hold on, she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. I'm taking you home. For the first time in years, hope filled the empty void of space. Nerissa tightened her grip around Orion as she carefully helped him stand. His body was weak, barely able to support his own weight. He winced as he leaned against her, but there was still a spark of life in his tired eyes. You really came, Orion murmured, his voice hoarse from years of solitude. I never stopped looking, Nerissa whispered back, her heart pounding. Now hold on to me. We're leaving. Orion chuckled weakly. You always were stubborn. Nerissa didn't respond. She was too focused on getting him out of this wreck. She tapped her wrist communicator, activating her ship's retrieval system. The vessel hummed in response, locking onto their position. But something was wrong. The ship's warning system beeped, sending a sharp alert through her earpiece. Nerissa's eyes widened as she checked the readings. Movement detected nearby. They were not alone. She instinctively pulled Orion behind a metal console, scanning the shadows of the wreckage. The darkness seemed to shift as something lurked beyond her sight. The sound of scraping metal echoed through the ruined ship, followed by a low guttural growl. Orion stiffened. Not good, he muttered. Nerissa recognized the sound immediately. Survivors of the old war often spoke of scavenger beasts that fed on the remains of the dead, creatures that had adapted to live in these floating graveyards. They were blind, but could sense movement and heat, and they had just found new prey. Stay quiet, Nerissa whispered as she reached for her plasma pistol. Orion nodded, gripping her arm for balance. A shadow moved in the doorway, a hulking, armored beast with jagged limbs and glowing slits where its eyes should be. It sniffed the air, detecting their presence. Nerissa calculated her options. Fighting was risky. They had to escape. Her ship was waiting outside, but they needed to move fast. She turned to Orion. When I say run, you run. Orion smirked weakly. I don't think I remember how. Then let me remind you. She grabbed a broken panel from the floor and threw it across the room. The loud crash made the beast snarl and turn in the other direction. Without wasting a second, Nerissa pulled Orion forward. Now. They dashed toward the exit, Nerissa half carrying Orion as they moved. The beast roared behind them, realizing the trick. Heavy footsteps pounded after them, shaking the ship. Just as they reached the breach Nerissa had cut earlier, the creature lunged. Nerissa spun, raising her pistol, and fired. A bright plasma bolt struck the beast's side, sending it reeling. It roared in fury, but it was too late. Nerissa and Orion had already jumped. The ship's autograv system caught them midair, pulling them safely inside. The hatch sealed shut just as the beast crashed against the exterior. Breathing heavily, Orion collapsed onto the floor. He looked up at Nerissa and grinned. "Still got it," he muttered. Nerissa let out a relieved laugh. "You never lost it." Inside the safety of Nerissa's ship, Orion lay on a cushioned seat, breathing heavily. His body was weak, but his eyes stayed locked onto her as if afraid she might disappear. Nerissa knelt beside him, scanning his vitals with a small medical device. His pulse was faint but stable. "You need rest," she said softly, brushing his tangled hair back. Orion chuckled weakly. "Rest. Sounds nice." She injected a small dose of nutrients into his arm, helping his body recover from years of starvation. He flinched slightly but didn't protest. His human resilience had always amazed her. As the ship's autopilot engaged, Nerissa sat beside him, watching the asteroid field shrink in the distance. A deep sigh escaped her lips. He was safe. For now. Orion turned his head to her. "How did you find me?" She met his gaze. "A transmission. It was old, weak, but it reached me." His brows furrowed. "I sent that years ago. I never thought it would work." "It did," she whispered, "and I never stopped hoping." Orion smiled faintly, his fingers brushing against the silver pendant she still wore, the one he had given her long ago. The sight made his eyes soften. "You kept it," he murmured. Nerissa placed her hand over his. "Of course." For a moment, there was only silence between them, a silence filled with emotions too heavy for words. Then the ship's warning alarm beeped. Nerissa stood immediately, checking the monitors. A patrol ship was nearby. She narrowed her eyes. It wasn't from her people, nor was it human. "What is it?" Orion asked, struggling to sit up. "Trouble," she muttered. The patrol ship sent out a scan, searching for nearby vessels. Nerissa quickly activated the stealth mode, making her ship appear as nothing but space debris. The enemy scan passed over them, then moved away. She exhaled in relief. "They're leaving." Orion frowned. "Who were they?" Nerissa hesitated. "Mercenaries. They monitor these zones, looking for survivors or lost technology." Orion's face darkened. "So if they found me, they've taken you," she finished grimly. Orion clenched his jaw. "I survived this long only to end up as a prize for mercenaries. No, thanks." Nerissa gave him a reassuring look. "That won't happen. I won't let it." She set the course to a hidden location, one she had visited only once before, a secret human colony, far from the reach of war and mercenaries. It was a place where survivors like Orion could recover. "We're going somewhere safe," she said. Orion looked at her, trust in his tired eyes. "Then let's go." The ship soared into the darkness of space, carrying them toward a new beginning. Nerissa guided the ship through the final stretch of space, the hidden colony drawing closer. Her fingers flew over the controls, adjusting the trajectory and inputting the codes needed to bypass the colony's automated defenses. It had taken years of careful diplomacy to earn the trust of the colonists, and now that trust was her key to keeping Orion safe. Orion, though still frail, was upright and alert now. He sat in the co-pilot's seat, his sharp eyes scanning the view ahead. The rest and nutrients had given him back a spark of strength, though his body still showed the toll of years of isolation. But his gaze, steady and focused, was unmistakably the same. "You've been here before?" he asked, his voice raspy but stronger than before. Nerissa nodded. "Just once. After the war, I helped these survivors find a home where they wouldn't be hunted. They keep to themselves, but they're good people. You'll be safe here." Orion leaned back, exhaling. "Safe," he repeated, as if testing the word's meaning after so many years of danger and struggle. Nerissa glanced at him, her silver eyes soft. "You'll have time to heal, Orion, and once you're better, you can decide where to go next." He met her gaze and gave a small, weary smile. "You talk like you're leaving." She hesitated. "You'll be in good hands here. The colony can provide better care than I can. I want to make sure you're all right." Orion reached over, resting a hand lightly on her arm. "Nerissa, I wouldn't have made it this far without you. You never gave up on me. Don't start now." A lump formed in her throat. His words touched something deep inside her, something she'd kept buried for too long. She swallowed hard, refocusing on the approaching colony. Its shimmering dome came into view, a safe haven nestled in the shadow of a massive asteroid. The colony was hidden, its location known only to those who sought peace. The ship's comm crackled as the colony's control tower contacted them. Nerissa answered calmly, identifying herself and explaining their arrival. After a brief pause, they were cleared for landing. The ship descended gently onto a landing pad surrounded by high, gleaming walls. The airlock opened, and a small welcoming party stood waiting. Humans who had once been stranded, like Orion. Their smiles were warm, their gazes curious and kind. Nerissa helped Orion step out of the ship, and the colonists came forward to greet them. But as they approached, Orion stopped suddenly. He turned to Nerissa, his hand still holding hers for support. His voice was quiet, but firm. "I'm only staying here if you stay too." Nerissa looked at him, her breath caught in her chest. For the first time in years, she saw not just the survivor she had saved, but the man she had loved and thought she'd lost forever. And now he was standing before her, alive, asking her to stay. Tears welled in her eyes, and she simply nodded. "I'll stay." Nerissa remained by Orion's side as the colony's medical team gently guided him into their care. They led him to a bright, clean facility where advanced human and alien technology blended seamlessly. The colonists moved with quiet efficiency, their faces calm and welcoming. Even here, in this hidden corner of the galaxy, humanity's creativity and adaptability shone through. Orion sat on the edge of a medical bed, looking around in wonder. "You helped build all this?" he asked Nerissa, his voice tinged with admiration. She smiled faintly. "I only helped them settle here. The rest was all them. Engineers, scientists, farmers. They took the tools and made it their own." One of the colony's doctors, a woman with steady hands and kind eyes, began scanning Orion's vitals. She offered Nerissa a reassuring nod. "His condition is stable, but he'll need time to regain his strength. We'll take good care of him." Nerissa felt a wave of relief. She thanked the doctor and sat down beside Orion. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of calm, knowing he was safe. As the days passed, Orion grew stronger. The colonists welcomed him with open arms, sharing their stories and their work. They had built a thriving community here: hydroponic farms, solar-powered shelters, even small workshops where they tinkered with old spacecraft. Orion quickly found a role, lending his knowledge and experience to their projects. Despite his weakened body, his sharp mind and determined spirit made him invaluable. Nerissa stayed too, helping where she could. Though she was not human, the colonists respected her as the one who had brought them here long ago. She worked alongside them, repairing equipment, offering diplomatic guidance when disputes arose, and helping Orion regain his footing. Together, Nerissa and Orion began to dream of something greater. They saw potential in this hidden colony, an opportunity to unite those who had once been divided. Humans and aliens, once enemies, could learn from one another, grow stronger together, and create a future where their shared strengths would outshine their differences. Orion's presence became a symbol of hope. His return from the brink of death inspired others, reminding them of humanity's resilience and determination. And Nerissa, standing at his side, proved that even the vast cultural divide between species could be bridged. Late one evening, as the twin moons cast their gentle light over the colony, Nerissa and Orion stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling settlement. They watched children play in the open courtyards, adults tending to crops, and workers adjusting solar panels. "This," Orion said softly, "is what we've always fought for, a place where people can just live." Nerissa nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the moons. "We found it. And now it's our responsibility to protect it, to help it grow." Together, they decided to create a council, one that would welcome all species, value collaboration, and ensure that no one would ever feel alone in the universe again. Their alliance, forged in struggle and sustained by trust, would be their greatest legacy. The days at the hidden colony became a rhythm of healing and rebuilding. Orion's strength returned little by little, thanks to the care of the colonists and Nerissa's unwavering support. Every morning, he walked through the settlement's open streets, feeling the warmth of the sun on his skin and the familiar buzz of human voices around him. It was a stark contrast to the years of isolation he had endured, and the simple act of seeing other people, laughing, working, living, filled him with a quiet gratitude. Nerissa remained close. She had settled into the colony's daily life as naturally as if she had always been part of it. Her calm demeanor and quick thinking earned her respect, and the colonists looked to her and Orion for guidance. Despite her alien appearance, she fit in among them, proving that trust and friendship could transcend all barriers. One afternoon, Orion stood with Nerissa near a newly built observatory. The colonists had constructed it from old ship parts, a gleaming dome that now held telescopes and navigation systems. From here, they could watch the stars, chart new paths, and keep an eye on any potential threats. It was more than just a lookout. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that they were no longer lost, but pioneers. "I can't believe how far they've come," Orion said, his voice filled with admiration. "These people, they'd built a new life out of the ashes of the old one." Nerissa looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's what humans do. They adapt. They create. Even in the worst conditions, you find a way to survive, and not just survive, but thrive." Orion turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "You always said that about us, even back then." "Because it's true," she replied, "and you're living proof of it." He chuckled softly. "I'm not exactly a shining example of human resilience. You saw what I looked like when you found me." "You were alive," she said simply. "When most would have given up, you held on. That's more than enough." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as a group of children ran past, laughing as they played a makeshift game in the dusty courtyard. The sight warmed something in Orion's chest, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. It wasn't just relief, it was hope. "This place could be more than just a refuge," he said after a while. "It could be a new start. For humans, for aliens, for anyone who needs it." Nerissa nodded, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon. "It can be, and we can make sure it stays that way." Together, they turned back toward the colony, ready to help guide its future. For the first time since the war, they both felt something they hadn't dared to feel for years, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. They had found their home among the stars, and now they were determined to protect it. As the sun set behind the towering asteroid that sheltered their new world, Orion and Nerissa walked side by side into the heart of the colony, their hearts lightened by a shared dream: to build a future where no one was ever left behind again. Under the twin moons, the colony thrived. The settlement that had once been a hiding place now pulsed with life and promise. Nerissa and Orion stood at the center of it all, surrounded by bustling markets, tinkering engineers, and children's laughter ringing through the air. Orion had regained his strength, though faint scars remained from the years spent fighting to survive. He no longer walked with hesitation, but with purpose, helping lead the colonists in building more than just a home, building a community where everyone belonged. His sharp mind and calm demeanor made him a trusted leader, one who understood hardship and carried the wisdom of a survivor. Nerissa, too, had found a new role here. Once an ambassador between her people and the humans, she now used her experience to foster cooperation between the colony and neighboring systems. Visitors from far-off worlds began to arrive, seeking refuge or trade, and Nerissa welcomed them with open arms. Her voice, steady and clear, became a beacon of peace and unity, a living example of what was possible when species set aside their differences. One day, as the suns dipped low on the horizon, Orion and Nerissa gathered with the colony's council. It had been their idea to form a council, not ruled by one individual but made up of voices from every background. Humans, aliens, and other species alike sat at the table, sharing ideas and making decisions together. The council's goal was simple: to ensure the safety, growth, and happiness of all who called the colony home. Orion tapped the table lightly, drawing everyone's attention. "We've come a long way," he began, his voice steady. "When I arrived here, I was barely alive. This place saved me, just as it saved so many others. But now it's time we look outward, not just inward." The council members nodded, listening intently. Nerissa picked up where he left off. "The galaxy is changing. There are still places of conflict and hardship, but there are also opportunities to help. We have knowledge, resources, and, most importantly, a shared vision of a better future." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We can be more than a colony. We can be a symbol of what's possible when people, any people, choose cooperation over division." Orion glanced at her, and the faintest smile touched his lips. He turned back to the group. "Let's start with small steps. Trade with neighboring planets. Reach out to those in need. And always, always remember that we're stronger together than apart." The council erupted into quiet, thoughtful discussion. For hours they debated ideas, made plans, and set goals. It wasn't easy, but progress never was. Yet as they talked, a feeling of hope filled the room, a sense that they weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something new, something worth protecting. By the time the meeting ended, Orion and Nerissa stepped outside together. The air was cool, and the twin moons cast long shadows on the ground. They looked out over the colony, at the lights twinkling in the buildings, and the people moving with purpose and joy. "This is what I always hoped for," Nerissa said softly. Orion nodded. "A place we can all call home." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the past lifting from their shoulders. They had faced loss, danger, and uncertainty, but they had emerged stronger. Together, they would continue to lead this colony into a future of peace, understanding, and boundless possibility. And under the endless stars, their journey, though hard-fought, had finally brought them to a place of hope.